Hey everybody, I'm going to be real quick this morning and talk about an update on the Kentucky coaching search. According to multiple sources and of course Matt Norlander of CBS, Kentucky is nearing a completed deal with making Mark Pope the next head coach at Kentucky. Mark Pope is a Kentucky alumni. He was picked in the second round of the NBA draft, won a national championship as a player with Kentucky, and has been the head coach of the BYU Cougars for the last couple of years. He took BYU to the NCAA tournament in their first year in the Big 12 conference this season, but lost to 11 seed Duquesne in the NCAA tournament in the first round. Pope has yet to win an NCAA tournament game as a coach. He is 0-2 all time in the tournament so far. That's of course part one of this story. Mark Pope, in my personal opinion, is a very good coach, but this hire is not the biggest thing here. The bigger story right now is the situation in this coaching search. I don't know what Mitch Barnhart's real plan was to replace Calipari. So just to get everybody caught up on what happened with Kentucky search, in case you're outside of Big Blue Nation and haven't been keeping up with this story. Kentucky was turned down by Scott Drew at Baylor, who was a big time target of Mitch Barnhart when the Kyle Tucker story came out last season. Drew was who Barnhart wanted to replace Cal. Drew sent his family to Lexington, from our understanding, and kind of scouted out the place and decided to stay in Baylor and stay in Waco to coach the Bears. Then there was the story about how Kentucky went after Dan Hurley. Dan Hurley of UConn, coming off of back-to-back national championships this season. Hurley already said he was flattered this week on a TV show, but wasn't interested in the UK job. That didn't stop Kentucky. Supposedly, Kentucky came after Hurley with a huge offer, but Hurley wasn't leaving UConn. According to Norlander, there was little doubt, as is, but this is final. Sources told CBS Sports there was a 0% chance Dan Hurley would leave UConn for Kentucky. It's not happening. Said one source on Hurley to Kentucky, they could offer $20 million a year and he wouldn't go. Hurley, the national coach of the year, has the perfect job for him and has the top staff in the country and is running the best program in the sport. According to Norlander, Kentucky also did not aggressively pursue Billy Donovan in this coaching search. Kentucky apparently checked in with Donovan's camp, but at no point did UK aggressively pursue or put any emphasis on trying to hire him. Of course, the biggest concern was the fact the Chicago Bulls are going to be in the play-in tournament, and there was concern that they would have to wait until the NBA season was over for the Bulls. According to Matt Norlander, Mitch Barnhart ID'd Mark Pope as a candidate for the UK job approximately 3 days ago, per a source. There was not an impromptu decision on Thursday. Pope had previously arranged a meeting with Kentucky. Kentucky sent a contract that Pope has for a 5-year deal on an average of $5.5 million annually. Kentucky went to a couple of big name coaches and ended up going with a coach who has never won an NCAA tournament game. This is a massively underwhelming hire for Kentucky, and I think their fans are rightfully upset about this. And I personally do not like this situation for anybody. I don't like it for Mark Pope. I don't like it for Kentucky fans. And I don't like it really for the state of basketball and the SEC, as prominent of a program that Kentucky is. This is a very strange all around hire. I think Tristan Ferris from A Sea of Blue, he made a tweet on Twitter, and he's been on this show before, and he's had some great opinions, and I like his takes a lot. He had this to say: this hire isn't fair to Kentucky fans nor Mark Pope. He will be hired with mass disapproval. Mark Pope may be a loved player of Kentucky history, and fans may love him as a guy and an alumni of this program, but the resume is the issue here. This is lacking for a job of this magnitude. I think if this hire was made in an alternate timeline 5 years down the road, Kentucky fans would meet this with open arms. They'd have a little concern, but surely Mark Pope would have found some tournament success at this point. And Kentucky would be getting a Kentucky guy. But here in this reality, this is a situation that doesn't make sense at this time. Kentucky still had a ways to go before settling or landing on Pope as the next head coach. Kentucky could have gone over Pearl at Auburn, Miller at Xavier, and others. It's like Mitch Barnhart went to a car auction and bid on the Ferrari and the Audi, didn't win them, skipped over the Corvette and the Supra, and went straight to the Toyota Camry. You had other options to check out first that would have probably been more exciting hires for Kentucky. And honestly, I think if Kentucky had made a run at some of those coaches and still lost those bids, I think fans would be a little less disapproving of this hire of Mark Pope so far, or this supposed hire of Mark Pope. So, what does this say about the state of basketball for Kentucky at this given time? I don't want to over speculate on this because I'm not a Kentucky guy who's just ingrained in the situation there in Lexington. But I have some education on coaching contracts and the hiring process, thanks to my background. The number one question nowadays when it comes to coaching hires is no longer the salary. Yes, that's an important factor, but it's not the number one thing that coaches are asking. And the number two question isn't even the roster anymore. The number one question is now the NIL situation, and that encompasses multiple questions down the road. They want to know about what's happening with your school's NIL because that's the biggest factor in getting recruits nowadays. And this is a very complicated question for administrations to answer. I don't think it's an unfair question for Kentucky fans to ask what is the NIL situation in Lexington right now when it comes to college basketball. There's a report that just came out that Kentucky boosters are set to donate $4 million to Kentucky's NIL, and Kentucky basketball launched a new NIL fund this season. NCAA projects Kentucky's NIL funds to be about $2 million below the SEC average. That's ninth best in the SEC, but there's also plenty of room for error in that projection. So take that with a grain of salt. But I do think at this time, it is totally fair to ask why this hire is taking place. And I think it's very fair for Kentucky fans to talk about the NIL situation with it being such a prominent portion of the coaching hiring process these days. So let's talk about Mark Pope himself. Pope is a good coach, and there is a high ceiling here for this hire. I really liked BYU this season. They were a ton of fun to watch. I thought they had a ton of potential this year. I actually ranked in my March Madness content this year, I ranked BYU on the same level as Kentucky of potential in the tournament this season. Very high ceiling, but an unstable floor. And I guess I wasn't too far off with that projection because in both ended up getting bumped out by lower seeds in the first round of the tournament. BYU was also underseeded in the tournament because of religious reasons and the rules that the Mormon Church and BYU put together, that they don't want their players playing on Sundays during the tournament. They could have also been a top 16 seed like Kentucky this year had it not been for those restrictions. So the NCAA tournament committee ended up making them a 6 seed in the tournament when they were probably closer to a 4 seed or a very high 5 seed. This season, they had big wins over San Diego State, Iowa State, Texas, Baylor, and Kansas. They were also the Vegas Showdown champions in their MTE this year. Pope's teams, they love to spread the floor, and they spread it extremely well because they space the floor so well. They have so many guys who normally can shoot on their roster. They're also extremely efficient from two because they run a lot of cut plays and teams try to guard that three ball. They take the three at will. It'll look like a defender made the dumbest defensive decision you've ever seen, because they'll be trying to guard the three when they're trying to cut to the basket to go for a two. A lot of defenses don't understand what's happening around them because they grow so concerned about the scoring potential that teams had. And that was the type of offense that Mark Pope was running in BYU, and it was extremely effective. They had assists on 60%, on over 60% of their baskets this year. One of the most up and coming styles of offense we're seeing in the sports right now is running a lot of zoom action. BYU utilized it a lot like Purdue, but it was utilized a little bit differently. Instead, they used a read and determine then determine whether to reject the screen or to set a three and curl a lot. And they'd reject this, they would reject the dribble handoff and curl to the basket a couple of times and set up easy twos or find a quick three or just different ways to set up this play. It was very, very determine the play, put the power in the player's hands and make the best play possible. And they also ran a lot of risky passes too to open up defenses, and they would risk things to get the most effective shot they possibly can find. It was also a straight up live by the three, die by the three team. You would see everybody shoot 1 through 5, even in transition from the three. It was a very entertaining brand of basketball, and it made for a very efficient offense. It was one of the best in KenPom this year. It's an exciting brand of basketball. I'm curious how it'll translate to higher end recruits coming to Kentucky with this. So I'm very interested to see when more talent is inserted into this offensive system, just how high the Mark Pope offense can rise. They did have some concerns on defense, but that's wasn't uncommon with a lot of teams we saw this year. So if you can do a little bit more on the defensive end and get the efficiency numbers that you had at BYU, you have a promising coach in this situation. This is a pick with a very high ceiling, but an unknown floor. So I would tell Big Blue Nation to give Pope a chance. Like, seriously, give him a chance. Give him a year or two to get his system in place. Try to find his players once. If you don't make the tournament next year, I know that's not the standard at Kentucky, but don't freak out about it. Like, give this guy just a little bit of breathing room because he's in a situation right now where he probably needs it. If you can let him get to the recruits that he needs to get and put a roster that fits his offensive system and run it the way that he wants, this could be very good. The floor could be your worst fears. I completely understand that, but the ceiling can be one that is massive under Mark Pope and be one of the most daring hires in college basketball we've seen in a long time. This may be underwhelming. This may be met with disapproval, but if you give Mark Pope a chance, he could very easily surprise all of us. And he could be a very exciting hire for Kentucky. I personally like Mark Pope. I know the resume isn't what Kentucky fans want, but the X's and O's and ideas of his game plan to modern basketball is very good. So give the guy a chance. Let him do his thing. He's gotten big wins in the past while he was playing in a very difficult conference. I remind everybody, the Big 12, the Big East, and the SEC are the three best conferences in college basketball right now, and he did extremely well in the Big 12 this season. So give the guy a chance. I personally feel like there's a lot of upside here. I like the Mark Pope hire from the X's and O's and potential standpoint. I share your concern, Kentucky fans, with the resume portion. I totally understand that piece of thinking, but give the guy a chance. Hey guys, if you have not liked and subscribed to the Hoop Southbound show, we greatly appreciate it. We're going to be talking more about this hire on our weekly show on Sunday evening, Monday morning when the show drops on this YouTube channel and on our Spotify and podcast. So please like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Follow us anywhere you get your podcast. We're going to be talking coaching carousel. We're going to be talking this freshman class situation that Kentucky's gotten themselves into with Calipari leaving. It's not really Kentucky getting themselves anything, but you guys know what I meant. But yeah, we're going to be talking about the freshman classes. We're going to be talking about the transfer portal. We're going to be talking a little bit more on the Calipari hire to Arkansas and just everything that's going on, taking our first look at the NBA draft next week on the show. So guys, please like and subscribe, and we will catch you guys next time here on the Hoop Southbound show.